They used to say no one could ever defeat them. But today, in this barren desert, not even their bones can be found. Who were these mysterious people, and how did they disappear? Have you ever seen a desert at night, where, as far as the eye can see, there are only dunes of sand, and under the soft, dim light of the moon, the wind whispers through the emptiness? But these winds don't just carry dust. They carry a silent story, a story that can send a chill deep into your soul. This is the land between Oman and Yemen, a place we now call Ahqaf. Today, it is nothing but a lifeless ocean of sand, silent, empty, forgotten. But would you believe that right beneath this quiet desert lies an entire lost world? A mysterious world that once built towering palaces that seemed to touch the clouds, at a time when humans had no technology like today. No machines, no cranes, no bulldozers. The pillars of their palaces were so tall that clouds would brush against them as they passed. Their strength was beyond imagination. They carved solid mountains like they were shaping soft clay, turning them into homes. They had completely forgotten death. In their minds, they were the eternal rulers of the earth. Their pride pierced the skies. Then, one day, everything changed. A storm came. A storm so powerful that it erased them completely. Their mighty palaces, the ones they were so proud of, their enormous strength, all of it was buried beneath the same sand. Today, only a haunting silence remains. So what really happened? Who were they? And what did they do that forced nature to make such a terrifying decision? What kind of storm was it that scattered such a powerful nation like pieces of straw? Today, I'm going to tell you the true story of a people whose end still makes us stop and think. Let's go back thousands of years, not 100, not 200, but far beyond that, to this same land called Ahqaf, stretched between Yemen and Oman. Today it's a dry desert, but back then it was nothing like this. Fresh water rivers flowed through it. There were lush green gardens everywhere, and living there was the nation of Aad. These people built a city called Iram. Iram Dat Al-Imad, the city of towering pillars. You may have read or heard about many ancient cities of the world, but believe me, a city like Iram has never been built again on this earth. They raised magnificent palaces from solid stone, with pillars that reached toward the sky. Now you might be wondering, how did they do all this without any technology? And what did they even look like? They were nothing like us. Their bodies were massive, tall, broad, powerful beyond belief. If a person from today stood next to them, he would look like a small child. They had incredible strength. They would go to the mountains and carve those hard rocks as if they were kneading clay. They didn't need cranes or machines. Their arms alone were strong enough to lift stones weighing hundreds of tons and move them with ease. They built strong forts and homes inside the mountains. Their doorways were so high that a rider could enter on his horse without even bending. Their utensils were so large that food for entire families could be cooked at once, and when they walked, the ground would tremble under their footsteps. But do you know what? This very strength, this massive power, became their greatest weakness. When a person gains too much power and there is no one to stop him, he starts to forget everything. And that is exactly what happened with the people of Aad. They made a mistake so big that they had to face its consequences in the most terrifying way. Just think about it. When a human gains this kind of unstoppable power, and there's no one left to question him, where does his mind go? What does he start to believe about himself? A human is made from dust, but too much power makes him think he's made of iron. And that's exactly what happened with the people of Aad. The intoxication of power filled their minds with such pride that they began to treat everything like it was beneath their feet. Grand gatherings were held. Their leaders would sit on their magnificent thrones and talk about just one thing. We are the true owners of this earth. No one like us has ever been born before, and no one ever will be again. Even their children, at a very young age, would lift massive stones just to show their strength. And their elders would stand proudly, chests raised high, saying, "Our children are the ones who can bend mountains." But this wasn't even the most shocking part. Do you know what their biggest illusion was? They believed that even nature was under their control, especially the winds. They were so lost in their power that they truly started thinking they owned the winds. They would challenge openly, saying, "Who is stronger than us? These storms, these winds, what can they possibly do to us?" Their young men would stand in the middle of the valley, spread their arms wide and say with arrogance, "Look, the wind moves by our command." Their elders would proudly tell stories. "Our ancestors could change the direction of the winds. Who can stop us?" And when you hear all this, you can't help but wonder, how can a human become this arrogant? Whenever they saw a storm coming from a distance, instead of fear, they would burst into laughter. "This wind is with us," they would say. "This storm won't fall on us. It will destroy our enemies." They had no idea that the very wind they thought was their servant would one day become their greatest enemy. When pride crosses its limits, a person becomes completely blind. And the people of Aad did the same thing, from which there is no turning back. They openly challenged. They looked toward the sky and shouted, "Is there anyone? Bring it on. Show us who is stronger than us." And you know what? Nature always answers such a challenge. Just before their destruction, a man was sent to them. A man who tried, one last time, to save them. When the entire nation had become blind in the intoxication of power, that's when the Creator sent one of his chosen servants among them, Prophet Hud, alayhi salam. He was one of them, from the same people, but his way, his thinking, was completely different. Where the voices of Aad's leaders thundered with pride, there was something else in Hud's voice, a calmness and a deep, sincere care. He would walk through their grand markets, he would stand near their huge gatherings, and with softness he would try to make them understand. He would say, "Oh, my people, bow before that one being who gave you all this power. There is no one worthy of worship except him. Why are you putting yourselves on the path of destruction?" Do you think people drunk on power would accept this so easily? Not at all. Their leaders would sit on their thrones, decorated with gold and jewels, and laugh loudly. They would mock Prophet Hud, alayhi salam. They would reply, "Hud, should we leave what our forefathers followed? We are so powerful that no disaster can even touch us. If there was any truth in what you say, these tall pillars of ours would have fallen by now." Just think about it. How painful it must have been for someone who could clearly see the destruction coming, while his own people laughed at it. Still, Prophet Hud, alayhi salam, kept trying. Again and again, he warned them with a heavy heart, "I am warning you of a punishment, one that you cannot even imagine. This power, these palaces, none of it will save you." But when hearts are locked by pride, no advice works. Words of truth would hit their stone-like hearts and fall away. They had become so arrogant that some people would even turn their faces away just by seeing Prophet Hud, alayhi salam, coming toward them. They were afraid, not of him, but of the fear his words might awaken inside them. They didn't want to face the truth. Then one day, it went too far. Prophet Hud, alayhi salam, stood right in front of their leaders and said, "Look at the system of this universe. In front of its creator, your power is nothing." And the reply they gave, it proved that there was no way back now. They laughed and with full arrogance said, "Stop trying to scare us. If you can bring any punishment, then bring it. We will stop it with our own strength." That was the final line. They had invited their own destruction, And what happened next? Did lightning strike from the sky immediately? No. Instead, nature gave them a silent warning, a warning they completely failed to understand. Have you ever felt that strange silence right before a storm? That stillness in the air, quietly telling you that something terrible is about to happen. The same thing happened in the valley of Ahqaf. The punishment didn't come right away. No lightning struck, no thunder roared. Just one night, suddenly, a strange sound filled the air. It wasn't the voice of a human, not of any animal either. It was coming straight from inside the mountains. A mysterious echo, as if someone far away was calling them. The proud people of Aad stepped out of their palaces, listened, and then burst into laughter. They said to each other, "It's nothing, just the echo of the mountains." To them, it meant nothing. But the signs of the Creator are never that simple. A human may become blind in the intoxication of power, but animals, they feel everything. A strange unrest spread among the desert animals. Birds went silent. Domestic animals started running around in fear. They could sense what was coming. But those giant humans, they stayed lost in their gatherings, as if nothing was wrong. Then came the second night. The ground trembled slightly, a very small earthquake. If it were any normal nation, they would have been shaken with fear. They would have bowed before their Creator in terror. But do you know what these people did? They came out of their palaces, laughed loudly, and actually started celebrating. They shouted with joy, "Look at our power! Even the earth trembles under our feet." Can you imagine that? Taking even a sign like this and turning it into pride. They couldn't understand. This wasn't fear of them. This was a silent warning from the Creator. Once again, Prophet Hud alayhi salam tried to stop them. He said, "These are not ordinary sounds. This is a warning." But they didn't listen, not even for a moment. And when people start laughing at the signs of the Creator, that's when their time runs out. The time of the people of Aad had reached its end. After this, the Creator sent upon them a test so severe that even those giant, powerful people began to scream. Now place yourself in that scene. Those rivers, once filled with cool, sweet water, suddenly dried up. Those lush green gardens, the ones they loved so much, began to wither and burn under the sun. It was as if the sky had held back every single drop of rain. This was the first phase of the punishment, a deadly drought that lasted for 3 long years. In the first year, when the rain didn't come, those proud leaders didn't care. They laughed as usual, sitting in their gatherings, and said, "It's nothing, just a change in weather. We are powerful people. What can this dryness possibly do to us?" They would look toward the sky, waiting for rain, but all they got in return was a terrifying silence. Then came the second year. Now reality was hitting them hard. Remember how massive their bodies were? That meant their hunger and their thirst were just as massive. Thirst dried their tongues, those huge stone vessels where food for entire families used to be cooked, now stood completely empty. People began to suffer. They would crave water and in anger smash their empty pots against the walls. Their animals, once a sign of their pride and power, started collapsing and dying from thirst. The land of the valley became so dry, so hard, as if it had turned into stone. Can you feel that pain? Those giant people who once claimed they ruled the winds were now begging for a single sip of water. Their grand palaces of pillars now felt like prisons, where hunger and thirst were dancing without mercy. Then came the third year. This was the moment when their laughter, their pride, those roaring voices that once challenged the sky, all of it disappeared. The voices that once echoed with arrogance were now stuck in their dry throats. Hunger and thirst had crushed those powerful bodies from the inside. When the pain became unbearable, They went to Prophet Hud alayhi salam with their last hope. But was there any hope left now? When Prophet Hud alayhi salam saw them, broken, weak and desperate, he did not cry, because the time of mercy had already passed. He simply said in clear words, "Now the punishment is very near." Hearing this, their last hope shattered, and then, on that silent, dry sky, something appeared, something that would decide their final fate. Just imagine, after 3 years of painful thirst, if clouds suddenly appear in the burning sky, how would it feel? For a thirsty person, it feels like life has returned, right? The same thing happened with the helpless people of Aad. One day, suddenly, the color of the sky changed, and above their heads, 3 large clouds appeared. One was red, one was white, and one was deep black. The moment they saw these clouds, it felt like life had returned to the dry valley. People went wild with happiness. At that moment, their leaders were given a final choice from the Creator. A call came, telling them to choose one of the 3 clouds for themselves. Can you guess which one they chose? With excitement and the last traces of their pride, they chose the black cloud. They thought, a black cloud means heavy rain, endless water, relief at last. They believed their suffering was over, their thirst would be quenched, the dry rivers would flow again, and they would return to their old power. People started celebrating. They danced with joy, looking at the sky, shouting, "Look! The clouds are here! The clouds are here!" That black cloud began moving quickly toward their city, Iram. As it came closer, a deep darkness spread over the valley. Strong, cool winds began to blow. Their happiness was at its peak, but what a terrible mistake they were making. They had no idea that the black cloud they were celebrating as mercy did not carry even a single drop of water. Inside it, there was only death. It was not rain. It was the very punishment Prophet Hud alayhi salam had been warning them about. Then, the first powerful gust of wind struck their city, and with that began the destruction, a destruction the world has never forgotten. Not a single drop of water fell from that black cloud. Instead, something else came out of it. A wind, a violent wind, with a sound like a hungry, raging beast roaring in anger. The first gust hit the city, and it carried with it clouds of dust and massive stones. Just imagine, those same people who were dancing in joy moments ago, what kind of fear must have taken over their faces. Every strike of that wind felt like it was choosing them, one by one, to erase them. The winds they once called their servants had now turned into a wild predator. Within moments, the storm grew stronger. Then came the second, even more terrifying gust. It ripped out strong trees that had stood for years, pulling them out from their roots. Their heavy animals, the ones they could barely control, were now flying in the air like dry straw. Their idols, their places of worship, their pride, their beautiful gardens, everything was being torn apart in the storm of sand. Nothing could be seen anymore, only dust and stones flying through the air. Then night fell, and the fear became even deeper. Mothers held their children tightly, hiding in corners, shaking with fear. Those giant men who once walked with pride were now trembling. But the roar of the storm, the terrifying howl of the wind, was so loud that their screams were lost within it. No one could help anyone. You might think, maybe they ran into their tall, strong palaces for safety. No. When the punishment of the Creator comes, stone walls cannot protect you. Then came the phase of the storm that destroyed everything. The third gust. It lifted human beings into the air. Those huge, powerful, heavy bodies were spinning in the sky like dry leaves. Their grand palaces, carved out of mountains, their city Iram, the one they were so proud of, was now sinking into the sand. Roofs were collapsing, stones were breaking apart. This wasn't a storm of 1 or 2 hours. This punishment lasted for 7 nights and 8 days. Think about that. 7 long nights, 8 days. The same terror, again and again. The sky kept roaring, the earth kept shaking. The wind kept lifting those proud bodies, throwing them against mountains, slamming them onto the ground until they became hollow from the inside, like dry, fallen trunks of date trees. Their unstoppable power, their pride, everything was crushed into dust. Everything was buried under the sea of sand. But in the middle of this destruction, there was one place where death could not reach. A safe cave hidden between the mountains. Inside that cave was Prophet Hud alayhi salam and the few people who had believed in the truth. Outside, mountains were breaking, the city was being torn apart, but inside there was the protection of Allah. Allah saved them completely. Prophet Hud alayhi salam thanked his Lord and with tearful eyes said, "O my Lord, you are the most merciful. Keep us firm on the path that leads to you." And then, on the 8th day, the storm stopped. A strange silence took over, a silence more terrifying than screams. When Prophet Hud alayhi salam stepped out of that cave and looked toward the valley, there was nothing left. Those grand palaces, those pillars that once seemed to touch the clouds, those giant people who used to say, "Who is stronger than us?" All of it was buried under thick layers of sand. On the ground, their bodies lay scattered like dry, hollow trunks of date trees. Those violent winds had slammed them again and again against the mountains, onto the earth, until they reached their end. Their laughter, their pride, their power, all turned into dust. Tears filled the eyes of Prophet Hud alayhi salam, because the sight of destruction is always painful. Today, thousands of years later, when science advanced, satellites from NASA captured images of this same desert of Ahqaf from space. And do you know what they found? Beneath those thick layers of sand, they discovered the paths of ancient rivers and the remains of a massive city. Modern research also accepts this now, that this silent, barren desert was once full of life. Rivers flowed here, gardens thrived here, and a powerful nation once lived here. The very same city that history remembers as Iram. So what does this story teach us? A human thinks his money, his status, his tall buildings, his modern technology will protect him from every disaster. But the truth is, when the Creator decides, no palace can stand, no power can save. The only one who survives is the one who stands with truth and bows with humility before his Creator. The end of arrogance is always dust. Now it's up to you what lesson you take from this scattered sand of history. Have you ever thought, in this modern world, which cloud our pride is waiting for? If you found this buried story in the sand powerful, make sure to like the video and tell me in the comments, which ancient nation's story would you like to hear next? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.